Good evening, everyone. My name is Vijender Singh, and I am here to discuss the essay paper that was conducted earlier in the morning today. Now, before I start with the discussion, let me first briefly give you some clarity regarding what this paper was all about, what the level of difficulty was, what students can expect, and any student who's not started preparing for the essay so far, what they are supposed to be doing. As far as this paper is concerned, first common question that students will have is what is the level of difficulty? Honestly speaking, especially if I compare it with the last few years, the paper this year was easy. But it was easy if you choose the right topics. Very often when we look at the pattern of the paper, out of the 8 topics last 2 or 3 years, there were 3, 4 topics each year which were coming from other areas. For example, social justice, for example, media, for example, social media, international relations. This year, 7 out of the 8 topics again were purely reflective. So if someone had to ask me what is the pattern, I would say that reflective topics even today remain predominant. However, the good part is when I meet an average student, the student says that, sir, I have a lot of problem with these reflective topics, philosophical topics, quote-based topics. In reality, these are the topics that are the easiest, where you can generate a lot of content if you know what you're supposed to be doing. And how you deal with them, we'll come to in some time. Third, in this year's paper, what is a reasonable score to expect or to target? Usually we say that a good score in the essay paper would be somewhere between 125 to 140. Anything higher than that would be a bonus. If you're getting 125 plus, we'll say that you performed reasonably well. Problem, however, is last year, 2024, most of the students saturated at a score between 100 to 110. Even students who got a very good rank, single digit ranks also, many of them found themselves in this score in the essay paper, despite claiming and despite being very honest about the fact that they had written good essays. The only assumption we can draw from there is that last year the marking was extremely strict, extremely stringent. On what criteria they assess the students, of course, only the UPSC knows. If the marking is stringent, I think again a score of 110, 115 will be the norm. But if the marking is normal, if students are graded on the basis of what they've written, I think in this paper, because the topics were easy, a lot of content could be generated. I think a score of 125, 130, 140, even higher would be easy to expect. Fourth, students ask the question that depending upon my optional, which option is useful for the essay paper? Honestly speaking, the answer is none. From every optional, any option that you're studying, I will not name any subject over here, but any option that you're studying, there is no doubt about the fact that you will get a lot of content that you can use in the essay paper. There's no doubt. Problem is that the essay is not a specialized, it is a generalist exercise. And since it is a generalist exercise, whichever option you have, maybe one paragraph, maybe 2 paragraphs you can write from there, that would be 200, 300 words. In the remaining 900 words, you will still need diversity in your essay. Just picking up content, thinkers, philosophers, concepts from one subject will not be enough. But the GS4 paper will certainly help you. In the ethics paper, we constantly keep saying that in the ethics paper, when you write an answer, the quality of your answer is determined by the quality of your examples. And a lot of examples that you use in essay can be used in the ethics paper. Lot of examples that we give you for ethics can be used similarly in the essay paper also. Fifth, students who've not prepared for the essay, who've never written an essay, they have the simple question that even if I want to start, in fact, many GS batches these days, the students are asking this question that, sir, I want to write, I don't know how to start. You give me a simple topic. For example, you say that muddy waters can only be cleared by leaving them alone. What do I write in this? Where am I supposed to get the content from? For this now, what do you have to do? 3 things. One, collect good content, relevant content, not content. And when I say relevant, not content that you like, not content that impresses you, but content that is actually suitable, not just for one essay topic, but across multiple topics. With essay writing, one very simple tip that I will give you is choose good content, use good examples, use good data, which can be used interchangeably across different topics, across different themes. Second, you will need regular writing practice. in my opinion, or what is regular writing practice? In my opinion, one essay in a week or even 3 essays in a month will be more than enough for you. Every 10 days, if you're writing one essay, it should be enough, but please write within the word limit, which means some students give me an essay. They say that, sir, please check this essay for me. The length of the essay is 300 words. That's a long answer, long GS or optional answer. There's very little I can tell you about what you've done right or wrong. Some other students, they go on writing, they write an essay which is 2000 words long. The word limit given is 1000 to 1200 words. As far as possible, stick to that. And about, again, 2 or 3 essays in a month, that should be enough. Problem, however, is students say that, sir, even if I write, how do I know that what I'm writing is on the right track? How do I know that whatever I've written will actually appeal to the examiner, will actually fetch me marks? For that, number 3, you will need standardized evaluation. You will need someone or the other who evaluates the essay for you and not a person who is biased towards you. For example, my roommate or my classmate might appreciate the fact, might respect the fact that I'm writing an essay and might say that whatever I've written is good enough. But that might not teach me anything. That might not give me any feedback which actually helps me improve. So, from any angle possible, try to get standardized evaluation for the essays that you're writing. With this in mind, before I start with the discussion, let me also briefly tell you the programs that Vajiram is launching for the essay module, for the essay paper. 2 programs we are launching in the next few days. The essay program, the essay module, is starting on the 14th of September. This program has 10 classes and it has 5 tests. These classes will also give you a lot of ready-made content. Some handouts I'll give you. This will have classes where you write inside the class. We'll have some mini tests and we'll have 5 full tests where you write the essay, where you get evaluated, and where later during the discussion, you can also see what other students were writing, why some students scored better than you and some students scored less than you, what you should be changing about yourself, and what mistakes you should try to avoid. On the other hand, there are some students who say that, sir, writing an essay, I think I'll be able to manage. I need more practice. I need evaluation. For that, then we are starting another program, 1st of September, which is the essay test series. The test series will start on the 1st. We will have 8 tests in this at a gap of 15 days each. You write the test, I'll give you the modern templates, what you could have written in the test, and most importantly, you'll get standardized evaluation. Question for a student typically would be, which of these programs should I join? One batch after the other, 1 year after the other, students ask me, how do I prepare for essay? Initially, I used to say, collect the content, try to write a few essays, try to evaluate. But I realized that some students, despite the best of their efforts, are not able to write well. They put in a lot of effort, they really study, they really, try to do justice to the topic, but they're not able to. If you believe that you don't have adequate content, if you believe that you have limited preparation time, you have an optional class, you have a GS class, so studying for an essay on your own is not always possible. And most importantly, if you want to develop smooth writing abilities, comprehensive writing abilities, I would advise that you join the module. Now, what is the right time to join? I would say right now, because at the moment there is no pressure as far as the prelims are concerned. By the end of the year, especially in the month of January next year, the countdown to the prelim starts. The essay paper is a full 250-mark paper. So the earlier you join, the more confidence you have. After that, you practice every now and then regularly, and you should be fairly comfortable in writing essays next year. Students who believe that they are comfortable with writing an essay, who are confident about their content, then the essay test series makes more sense for you. There are some students who read a lot. They are students who have written a lot, students who have a lot of good information. They believe that they can write well. Their problem is they don't know whether what they're writing is correct. So if you think that you need discipline in your practice, if you think that you need reliable evaluation, then it would be better that you join the test series. Both these programs should be over by the end of this year, by the 31st of December, keeping in mind that from the 1st of January, a student is mentally free and can focus exclusively on their prelims preparation. Once they've gone through the programs in May, after the prelims, even when they pick up the essay paper one more time, they will not have to start from zero. They will already have a certain proficiency, a certain competence in this paper. All right, so that's for your information here. More importantly, let me get to the paper that was conducted today. This is the paper, section A, section B, 4 topics each. Now, if you ask me, honestly speaking, which of these topics is difficult, the answer is none of them. One of them might be considered slightly, I would say difficult, but slightly complicated, slightly complex, which is topic number 5. Muddy water is best cleared by leaving it alone. And why is this complicated? Because if you look at this statement in the literal sense, it makes perfect sense. I'm sure sometime in the rain or sometimes when you're walking here and there, you would have seen a small puddle of water. Or maybe you see a pond. You imagine for a moment that there is a pond which has clear water. 3 or 4 children go there, they start playing and they kick up a lot of mud. The best way to clear that muddy water is to leave it alone. Once these children walk out, just leave that pond for about half an hour. All the mud will settle to the bottom and the pond will look absolutely clear. In the literal sense, it makes a lot of sense. But here when we say that it is best cleared by leaving it alone, I am suggesting that you do nothing. I am suggesting inaction. Now in the literal sense, yes, muddy waters can be cleared, but if I apply this to any other walk of life, if I look at, for example, India, what are the muddy waters we are treading through? What are the problems that we are facing? Our problem is poverty. Our problem is corruption. Our problem is crime. Our problem is discrimination. N number of problems we have. Here, if you leave the problems alone, they will not be solved. They'll get further aggravated. So this one topic, if you interpreted it correctly, I think you will be able to write comfortably. With the exception, if your interpretation is wrong, the topic will go horribly wrong. In detail, I'll discuss it after some time. The remaining 7 topics, however, I don't think there was a single topic that can be called difficult. And to understand how you deal with these topics, let me start with the first one, truth knows no color. But before I start with this, first let me just give you some basic guidelines, what points you should keep in mind to write a good essay. As I was just explaining with that topic, muddy waters should be left alone. First and the most important element of an essay is that you interpret the topic correctly. And when you're interpreting, what is the interpretation? What you believe this topic is saying. If I'm talking about muddy waters, I'm not literally and physically only talking about water. I'm talking about n number of problems that an individual, that a society, that an organization, that a country, that the entire world might be facing. And here when you're interpreting it, the interpretation should not be radical, it should not be controversial, it should not be partial. Don't focus on only one part of the topic and ignore another part altogether. How and why? I'll explain again with a couple of topics. Second, to write a good essay, ensure that you have fidelity upon the topic. What do you mean by fidelity? Let me use a simple word over here, that you maintain focus on the topic. There are students, we recently concluded the summer batch that I was taking for the essays here. Some topics I had given them, and you realize sometimes you have to ask the students that you've written an entire paragraph, you've written 4 or 5 pages on this essay, but important words, important terms that were given in the topic, I can't even see them. If I'm talking, for example, about muddy waters need to be cleared, need to be left alone to be cleared, I have read 5 pages of your essay. There is no reference to the term muddy waters. There's no reference to leaving it alone. In the student's mind, what they are writing is connected to the topic. But for a third person, the person reading your essay, evaluating your essay, they cannot always understand whatever you're writing, how is it connected to the topic. Which is why to write a good essay, repeatedly reinforce the topic. Ensure that whatever you're writing, you connect it with the topic. Third, what I was explaining with the optional, to write a good essay, you will need diversity in your thoughts, diversity in your perspectives. When we say it is a generalist exercise, it means that from one particular area, one subject, one perspective, don't keep using multiple points only from there. Any background you might have, let's say there's a doctor, they might have this propensity, they might have this sort of a habit that no matter how they write, they come back to diseases, they come back to healthcare, they come back to medical ethics. 1 or 2 paragraphs, we'll accept it. But after those 1 or 2 paragraphs, the rest of your essay should explore other dimensions also. Please look at the economic perspective. Please look at the historical perspective. Look at it from the perspective of women. Look at it from the perspective of caste. Different factors. Diversity must be included. Fourth, to write a good and more importantly an interesting essay, use examples, use data. Whenever you give any viewpoint, whenever you share any thought, your thought will not appeal to the other person, your thought will not convince the other person unless and until it is supported by some evidence. Use data, use examples, use anecdotes. But here, yes, one thing I will tell you, please don't use fictional examples. What is a fictional example? Students who have a limited range of reading, students who have limited content, any topic you give them, how do they start? They'll start by saying there were two sisters, Sita and Geeta. Sita received a good education, her parents sent her to school. Geeta, on the other hand, was kept at home, as a result of which, after 20 years, there's a significant gap between the two. What you're saying, I understand. It is making sense. Problem is that this almost anyone can write. It makes your essay very pedestrian in its quality. It makes your essay very substandard in its quality. So ensure that you use real examples, you use data, and it is abundantly available if you search for it in the right manner. Fifth and finally, especially in reflective essays, especially in the ethics paper also, ensure that you maintain an optimistic and a prescriptive orientation. What is optimistic? That no matter how negative the topic may be, no matter which problem I try to talk about, you will always maintain a positive orientation towards it. And number two, how do you maintain a positive orientation? By ensuring that whatever problems we are talking about, you give us suggestions through which that problem can be solved. And the suggestions that you're giving us, this is what we call a prescriptive orientation. No matter what the topic is, no matter which problem we are talking about, you will not, what should I say, you will not succumb to the problem. You will not admit that the problem is greater than us. You will say that at the end of the day, it is very important for human beings to strive to the best of their abilities. Today, one major problem that we are facing is climate change. Is it possible to combat climate change, to reverse the impact of climate change? On the face of it, the answer seems to be no. But if you think a little carefully, just about 25 years back, one major problem that the world was facing was the ozone layer or the depletion of the ozone layer. And if I was talking to you 30 years back, it seemed literally impossible that mankind would be able to repair the gap in the ozone layer. Today, on the other hand, the problem related to the ozone layer is a matter of history. It's almost forgotten. Why? Because we did come together. We did resolve that no matter what, we will fight this problem. Which is why, no matter what problem we talk about, you will remain optimistic and positive. You will give us prescriptions and suggestions regarding how that problem can be overcome or how a better future can be created. All right, some elements that a good essay should possess. Now, let me come to the first topic that was asked. Truth knows no color. Your first task in any essay is to interpret the essay correctly. So over here, first question in my mind should be, when I say truth knows no color, what do we mean by truth and what do we mean by color? Truth is a universal principle. And this universal principle is free of bias, is free of prejudices. No matter how you look at it, the fundamental principles of human existence remain unaltered. What is the truth or what is the universal principle? Number one, all of us are going to die. Number two, all of us are intended to be equal. Number three, you must respect your parents. And so on. Free of bias, free of prejudice. On the other hand, what do you mean by color? Coloring the truth means that you are using a factor that will cause discrimination or that will cause stereotyping. How can I color the truth? It is very evident what is right and wrong, and yet we'll try to manipulate the opinion of the people. We'll try to subvert their thinking. And how do I do that? What color can I use over here? I can use the color of caste. I can use the color of religion, gender, race, nationality, and so on. That one caste is superior to another. One gender is inferior to another. One religion is better than another. Those are the colors through which the truth can be tainted or the truth can be colored, can be manipulated. Second question I should ask is, how can the truth be colored? What I was just saying, by viewing the universal principles from the lens of caste, religion, gender, nationality, and so on. However, now this is how I can try to twist the truth, manipulate the truth. Topic says that truth knows no color. So the most important question to ask is that when I can manipulate the truth, twist the truth from so many different perspectives, how can we say that truth knows no color? Because distortions based on any such colors are unfair, are temporary, are short-lived. No matter what discrimination, what prejudice, what bias you try to create, the truth will be very evident, because of which whatever these colors are, this manipulation is, it will be opposed and it will be challenged. When we say, now here a mistake that some people will make is that if I try to challenge the distortion of the truth, I will be successful. Not necessarily. If we talk about gender discrimination, if we talk about exploitation because of your economic status, exploitation of the poor, these have been going on for centuries. Despite knowing the truth, we are still doing what is wrong. But that does not mean that the truth can be hidden, that the truth can be concealed. Truth knows no color. The truth certainly will come out. Now, if I have to write this down, if I have to write different paragraphs, what will I write? Let me start with the first example, slavery in the US. Now, the fundamental truth is that all human beings are equal. Whether you are black, whether you are white, whether you are American, whether you are African, every single human being is considered or is expected to be equal. But with what color did we taint the truth? Race. Similarly, if you look at Marie Curie, the very famous scientist, now what is the color in her case? Color in her case is gender. What does that lead to? In the case of slavery, it leads to exploitation. In the case of gender, Marie Curie, it leads to discrimination. Despite the fact that she was one of the most brilliant scientists that the world has ever known, not only in the 20th century, the world has ever known, she faced a lot of discrimination, lot of rumors, lot of obstacles. And yet the truth cannot be hidden. And what is the truth here? That women can excel in any field that they pursue. Not only in science, a woman can become a scientist, a woman can become a sports person, a woman can become a wrestler, a woman can become a politician. She will be able to do anything, no matter how you try to color the truth. At the end, the truth will always prevail. Third example from India is this man called Adam Harry. Now, Adam Harry is a transgender who wanted to become a pilot, but the Director General of Civil Aviation said that since you are on hormone therapy, you will not be allowed to fly. From what color are we looking at this? Sex. And the truth at the end of the day is transgenders also deserve basic human rights. He fought a case in fact was taken up by the Hindu, the newspaper. They gave this a lot of coverage, it gained a lot of media attention, and finally even the DGCA had to revise their rules regarding aviation rules for transgenders. Why? Because the truth can be colored, the truth may be manipulated, but at the end of the day, the truth will always prevail. Fourth, Jyotirao Phule. Now, in his case, what is the color? Caste. Discrimination. He was very strictly, very strongly opposed to the Brahmanical caste system, and he believed that the rules that were made were not divine in form, were made by human beings. And here, what is the truth? That it is, I'm borrowing from B.R. Ambedkar, the annihilation of caste. That at the end of the day, we must strive our level best to create an equal and an egalitarian society. A truth that nobody can deny, a truth that knows no color. Fifth example, one of the most powerful examples from the 20th century is the Jewish Holocaust. In the Jewish Holocaust, what is the color that we added or that the Nazis added? Religion. And what is the fundamental truth? Religious equality. Even today, if you go to Germany, a lot of Germans, in fact, almost all Germans today, regret their association with the Jewish Holocaust. At that point in time, if you'd gone to Germany in the 1930s, 1940s, a lot of people, a lot of common, ordinary, decent citizens supported the Holocaust. Why did they support the Holocaust? Because the Nazis were successful in coloring the truth with the color of religion. But fundamentally, the truth will prevail that there must be religious equality. No religion is better or is worse than the other. Like I said, the topic is not difficult. All that you need is number one, the correct interpretation, and number two, ensure that you use diverse examples, diverse content. And throughout, now why am I writing this, the color over here or the truth over here? So that when you're writing the essay, you keep reinforcing the topic. As a person reads your essay, they should not feel detached between your content on the one hand and the topic on the other. That was the first topic. Second topic that was given in the paper this year was this one. This is the one topic I can say is not a philosophical topic, is not a reflective topic, a topic which to a large extent can be correlated with international relations. A lot of people will also say, many students must be thinking that because of the many conflicts that we are witnessing worldwide, this could be Israel and Palestine, this could be Russia and Ukraine, this could be India and Pakistan very recently. Maybe keeping those in mind, the UPSC has made this topic. And to a large extent, I think you would be right. This is one topic maybe that can be considered from the perspective of international relations. Now, the statement says the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. And this, I'm sure many of you would have recognized. Whose statement is this? Sun Tzu's. There was this, uh, Chinese ambassador to India. If I remember his name correctly, I think that was Ho Shi, who had written that India has culturally dominated China for centuries. I think it written 20 centuries without ever having to send a single soldier across her borders. What does that mean? That India by itself was so content, was so prosperous, was, what should I say, was so sure of itself that without having to do anything, it was able to capture the imagination of people and cultures, people, cultures, nations across the entire world. That is similar to what the sentiment here is saying. That the best way, the supreme art of war, is being able to subdue, being able to defeat your opponent without even fighting. Again, to interpret the topic, I break it into three parts. First question, what is the art of war? The art of war is the ability to ensure victory without even having to fight. Question now, when we say without fighting, what does fighting mean? Fighting invariably we would consider from the perspective of using hard power, by using military might, through armed conflicts, through wars. Without having to resort to war, without having to use hard power, you should be able to subdue your opponent. Question then is, why are we reluctant to fight? If I am a country which is more powerful than one of my neighbors, why should I not fight? I should not fight because fighting causes direct and collateral damage. This damage might be economic, might be environmental, might be human, might be political, and so on. Third, if I don't fight, then how do I win a war? You win a war, number one, by using your soft power. India has tremendous soft power. Number two, by using diplomacy. Number three, through economic sanctions. Number four, through political isolation, and so on. If you've interpreted this topic correctly, if you've understood this much, as I'm saying each of these words over here, I'm sure there is content which is already coming up in your mind, where you know where someone has used soft power, where we use political sanctions, where we use political isolation, and how we were able to subdue our enemy. What content will we generate for this topic? First example, of course, I'll start and I'll end by using our own example, India. Now, India's soft power, who's the enemy? Almost any other nation which is antagonistic, which is hostile towards us. And over here, how are we able to subdue the other nations? Through our cultural and our spiritual influence. What is India's soft power? India's soft power is yoga. India's soft power is our cinema. India's soft power is our festivals. India's soft power is Ayurveda. India's n number of factors that we have, our cultural and spiritual influence. Compare yourself with one of our neighboring countries and you realize that without fighting, without investing much, India is able to subdue these opponents, is able to get a higher standing only because of its soft power. Number two, second example, apartheid in South Africa for almost 45 years in the 20th century. What is the enemy over here? In one word, racism, discrimination against the black population. And how do you subdue the enemy without even fighting? No fight, no military power needed, only political isolation. When one country after the other starts accepting that apartheid is wrong, that racism is wrong, is the enemy, as they start isolating South Africa on a global stage, the pressure starts mounting, and very soon, South Africa will admit that it is time for apartheid to come to an end. Third, China's Belt and Road Initiative, China's debt diplomacy. Now, here, who's the enemy? For China now, it seems to be the domination, the hegemony of the Americans. And how do they subdue the American hegemony without even fighting? By limiting US global influence. Across the world today, if you talk about the world today, I think China has come to a point where they can be considered at par, or they are talked about in the same breath as the Americans, as the Russians. And how did they do this? Through a simple initiative. Fourth, without fighting. Fourth, the Cold War. Now here, who are the enemies? For the Americans, it is the Russians. For the Russians, it is the Americans. And how did they subdue the enemy? One of them had to come out of the Cold War triumphant and victorious. And who came out triumphant? The Americans. The disintegration of the USSR. And how did the Americans achieve this? Through economic pressure, through political pressure, through soft power, by popularizing the pop culture across the entire world, where one segment of the Soviet Union after the other started realizing that they would not be able to succeed, they would not be able to overcome the American power. And again, without fighting. Not a single war between the two. They came very close during the Cuban invasion, the Bay of Pigs invasion. But thankfully, the Cuban Missile Crisis, thankfully did not escalate into war. The enemy was subdued without fighting. And finally, one more example from India, which we claim very proudly, are nuclear tests. Now, when we conduct our nuclear test, who do we perceive to be our enemy? Any other nuclear weapon state. That is what I'll write here to be politically correct. To be more precise, at that time, what was our one big concern or one big threat at that point in time? The Chinese. And how do we subdue the enemy without fighting? By creating a credible deterrence. Now, here some person will have the question in their mind: have we actually been able to subdue the Chinese? On many indicators, many parameters, China is a very far distance ahead of India, correct? But China has never fought a war with us after 1962. And to a large extent, the credit could be given to our nuclear tests by creating a credible deterrence against our enemy. At least an outright confrontation, an armed confrontation has been avoided. Again, there are many examples, many more examples that could have been written, as long as you interpret the topic correctly. That we are subduing the other person, we are subduing the enemy, and we are doing that without fighting, without using hard power. The next topic that they gave was, again, like I said, most of them are very simple. This one also. Thought finds a world and creates one also. Again, we divide the understanding into three parts. How does a thought find a world? A thought finds a world. What do you mean by a thought finding a world? That you start introspecting about the prevailing norms, about the prevailing circumstances, whoever you are. Whether you are an individual, whether you are a society, whether you are a country, introspect and think about what you find around yourself and realizing the problems in your environment. What can these problems be? This might be discrimination, this might be hunger, this might be poverty, this might be exploitation, this might be skewed economic growth, whatever it might be. A thought finds a world. Number two, how does or what does finding a world do? When you think about your environment and circumstances, when you self-reflect, when you're honest with yourself, this will help you expose injustices. This will help you understand the evils that you see around you and their root causes. And once you understand what are the injustices, what are the evils, what are the problems around us, which in our day-to-day living we don't even seem to identify, this now will also create a world. How will it create a world? Because whichever injustice, whichever problem we have witnessed, this will help you devise a solution to the problem. Once you understand that the circumstances in which you are living they are not ideal, they are not perfect, there are many problems in them, now there is a greater likelihood that you will focus on the solution and try to create a utopian existence. You might not succeed. You might achieve only a small part of what you try to achieve. yet you will at least move in the right direction. You'll try to create a newer world. Now, if I have to justify this, again, my thoughts will count for very little unless I can justify this by giving appropriate examples. And here now in the essay, what will I write? Number one, B.R. Ambedkar. Now, if I look at B.R. Ambedkar, which world did he find? I'm sure when he was a small boy, 3 years, 5 years, 8 years old, he would have not realized, born into a certain set of circumstances, we don't really realize what is wrong and what is absolutely unacceptable around us. But when he starts thinking, when he starts introspecting, he realizes that he is in a world which is regressive, which is orthodox, which is discriminatory, which is exploitative. And now, which world does he create? He, through multiple efforts, through multiple initiatives, tries to create a world which is egalitarian, a world that gives dignity to all, a world that is defiant. Just because someone says that a person from one community deserves to be treated in a certain manner, he will not agree with it. And he tries to promote fraternity, equality amongst all people. Similarly, Mahabir forgot. What world did he find? Patriarchy. And again, I'm sure when he was small, when he was, I don't know, in his teens also, being a wrestler himself, I don't think he would have really thought, why is it only men who usually wrestle, why not women? But when he thinks about it, the thought helps him find the world. What is the world? Patriarchal, where equal opportunities are not given to men and women in most fields around us. And what world does he create? By training his own daughters, by opposing the patriarchal norms of society, by facing a lot of ridicule, even social isolation, he creates a world that is gender parity in wrestling. Today, almost any girl who enters the field of wrestling or who aspires to become a wrestler, high probability she seeks or she gets inspiration from the Fogart sisters. Why? Because the thought not only finds a world, it also creates one. Third example that I would give you here is Jonas Salk, the person credited with the creation of the polio vaccine. What world did he find? A world that was stricken by polio. And what world did he create? A world that is polio free. And how did he do it? Very simply, by not patenting his polio vaccine, by keeping it free for people. Why? Because he thought about it and then he created a new world. Fourth, Gautam Buddha. What world did he find? A world full of suffering. But he was not content to only realize the suffering. He was not content with enjoying small material pleasures, temporary material pleasures. He thought about it and he realized that almost everyone, no matter who that person is, whether it is a king, whether it is a pauper, whether it is a mendicant, whether it is a man, a woman, young, old, almost everyone was suffering. And as he thinks about it, what world does he create? A world where he is able to show people, whether they walk on the path is another thing, but he's at least able to show people the path to nirvana. That if you want contentment, if you want inner peace, you must learn how to control your desires. Where does he develop this from? From that thought. Fifth, very famous, very inspirational person, Louis Braille. Now, Louis Braille, and for those of you who don't know about him, I'm sure you've heard of the Braille system. Louis Braille was 3 years old when he turned blind. By the age of 15, he had developed the Braille system. Now, if you look at Louis, at 3, I'm sure he was not introspecting, he didn't have the ability to think very deeply. But somewhere between the age of 3 to 15, a thought must have come to him. Which world did he see around him? A world where you need eyes to be able to read. You need eyesight, you need vision to be able to read. But he now created a world where if you have to read, you can even touch to read. What is that called? The tactile reading and writing system called the Braille system. And how does he create it? Because a thought will not only find a world, a thought can also create a world. Again, like I'm saying, the topics are not difficult. They are fairly simple. The interpretation should be correct and there should be diversity in the content that you're writing. Next topic that they gave was a very simple topic and I'm quite confident here. The students who are part of the essay course, they've been writing many essays and I don't know whether I'm right or wrong, but I'm fairly confident that from section A, most of the students would have written this topic. The best lessons are learned from bitter experiences. The first question, what is a bitter experience? Tragedy, failure, threat to survival, setbacks, challenges, adversities, whatever you want to call it. Number two, how do bitter experiences teach us? Bitter experiences, unpleasant experiences teach us by pushing us out of our comfort zone. When they push us out of our comfort zone, they sometimes also threaten our survival. A bad experience, an unpleasant experience, compels me to wake up, shakes me up. It's like you're sitting comfortable in your own world, and someone throws a glass of ice cold water on you. That's a bitter experience, but it will teach you. How will it teach you? Because these experiences now, when my survival is being threatened, they will test your resolve. They will teach you resilience. They will teach you how to adapt. They will teach you fortitude, motivation, perseverance. Why? Because you don't have a choice. When the experience is bitter, it is not in your control. And the only way you can survive, the only way you can bring circumstances in your control is by adopting values like these. You'll have to be determined. You will have to have courage. You will have to come up. You'll have to realize your full potential. And third, these bitter experiences, why are these lessons, whatever they teach us, why are these lessons the best? Because these bitter experiences compel us to identify the root cause of the problem. Not just focus on these symptoms, but to more importantly identify the root cause, devise solutions, and they help us discover our hidden potential. They shape our identity, our personality, our character. And once our identity, our personality changes, in the future, we'll be better prepared to deal with any bitter experience or any difficult experience. A student who gives an examination and is quite confident that he or she will pass, if they do not pass that exam and when they realize that everyone is questioning them, everyone is comparing them with other people, this bitter experience, what will it do? It will teach them, it will push them out of their comfort zone. That life is not school and college, there's much more than that. This will test your resolve, this will teach you resilience, this will teach you adaptation. And these lessons will stay with you for a major part of your life. And over here now, if I have to choose some content, if I have to choose some examples, they're fairly easy. First example, Viktor Frankl, the Australian psychologist who found himself in a concentration camp during the Second World War. What is his bitter experience? Of course, the Jewish Holocaust. And what is the lesson that he learns? Viktor Frankl, when he was in the concentration camp, in front of him, in front of his own eyes, witnessed the death of his wife, of his brother, of his parents. There was death, suffering, torture, misery on a daily basis. And this now, what did it teach him? He noticed that in the concentration camps, there were some people who were more likely to perish, more likely to die, and some people who, despite seeing a lot of suffering, were still able to survive. He realized that the difference between these two categories was that the second people, the one who were likely to survive, were the ones who identified a purpose in their life. And this led him to develop what is today called logotherapy. His very famous book, Man's Search for Meaning, focuses on only one element, that if you identify a purpose in your life, high probability it will enable you to overcome any difficulties, any bitter experiences that you've gone through. Second example, best lessons from bitter experiences, Alfred Nobel. Alfred Nobel, of course, made a lot of money through his invention of dynamite. Now, he had intended that dynamite would be used for the construction of roads. Wherever there's a mountain, wherever there's a boulder in your path, you blow it up using dynamite. But very soon, people started using dynamite not for construction but for destructive purposes. For example, killing. I don't know to what extent the story is right, but the story goes that Alfred Nobel once took a small break for a couple of months and went on a small holiday. Now, this is the 19th century. At that time, communication was not very, what should I say, not very common, not very fast. When he was absent for a long period of time, people started believing that something bad had happened to him. In that period, his brother unfortunately passed away. His brother died. And the newspapers published the false report, the wrong report, that not his brother, Alfred Nobel, had died. When they wrote his obituary, in the obituary, they used the word merchant of death. When Nobel came back from his holiday, when he realized what had happened, when he read the obituary, he was very disappointed. He was very saddened by the fact that if he died at that day, he would be remembered only as the merchant of death. He thought that he had done a lot for people. He had come out with a very good invention. And this better experience taught him a lesson that at the end of the day, your entire life will not be defined by your wealth, by your achievements, by your laurels. It will be defined by what you are remembered for. And here now, what lesson did he learn? That the one way to be remembered well is to recognize the good contributions that are made for the betterment of humanity. And that, of course, everyone knows is what we call the Nobel Prizes, honoring the most remarkable, the most meaningful contributions to the well-being of humanity. Third, famous example again from India, everyone I think knows him, Dashrath Manjhi. What is the bitter experience for him? His wife's death. Those who don't know, I don't know how to draw also, but let's say this is a mountain, this is a village, and this is a healthcare facility. Dashrath Manjhi needed to get his wife to the hospital. Unfortunately, there was a mountain in the way. As a result of which, his wife could not reach the hospital on time and unfortunately passed away. Now, very bitter experience, very tragic experience. What lesson did he learn? Dashrath Manjhi learned the simple lesson that you cannot depend upon others. You cannot wait for an apathetic government to act. You cannot wait for society to come together and cooperate. He learned, now here I am borrowing from Rabindranath Tagore, that if you want to solve a problem, what Tagore said very famously, ekla cholo, walk alone. And what does he do? With a shovel and a spade, he starts cutting through the mountains. A very famous story, 22 years, he'll cut through the mountain. The best lesson. And how did he learn the lesson? From a very bitter experience. Fourth, the case of this Indian lady in Ireland, 2012, called Savita Halappanavar. She was, I think, 31 years of age. She was expecting a child. There were complications in her pregnancy. But at that point in time, Irish laws, Ireland being a Catholic country, Irish laws prohibited abortion. Doctors obeyed the law, doctors followed the law, they did not perform the abortion, as a result of which the mother and the child both died. What is the bitter experience over here? That law won over life. And what lesson did we learn from there? Once she died, it created a global outrage that given a choice between law on the one hand and human life on the other, human life should be given priority. Human life should be given preference. And what lesson did we learn? That the sanctity of human life is paramount. And what has that led to? In Ireland, for example, 2016, they amended the law. Now, if there is any medical emergency related to a pregnancy, immediately the hospital will constitute a medical board, they will examine the conditions, and to the extent possible, they will permit the abortion. How did we learn this lesson? From a very bitter experience after losing an innocent life, in fact, the child also. And fifth, finally, what I had mentioned briefly some time back, ozone layer depletion. What is the bitter experience? The hole in the ozone layer and the threat to humanity. And what lesson did we learn? That if you have global cooperation, if you identify a common cause, you will be able to solve the problem. And that lesson, in more formal terms, is what we call the Montreal Protocol, where the entire world, regardless of their differences, regardless of their thoughts, came together to solve this one common problem that at that moment, entire humanity was facing. Like I said, simple topic, and I'm quite confident, I think, that many students would have written on this topic here. Now, that was section A. Section B, the first topic, like I said, was the one topic in the paper that can be considered not difficult but slightly complicated. So this one, let me go through it a little more carefully. Muddy water is best cleared by leaving it alone. If I look at this topic in a literal sense, of course, the answer is right. If there is muddy water around you, leave it as it is. In some time, the mud will settle to the bottom and the water will be visibly clearer or relatively clearer. Correct. But if I look at almost any problem around us, any problem that we are facing, you talk about climate change, can I leave it alone? No. You talk about deforestation, can I leave it alone? No. You talk about crimes, can I leave them alone? No. You talk about discrimination, exploitation, poverty, hunger, bad healthcare systems, poor education. There is almost no problem that we can leave alone and expect that it will get better over time. However, however, there are still some places where muddy water should be left alone. And where should it be left alone? When it become clearer, when there's an emotional or a psychological component. Whether it is individual, whether it is collective, that's another matter. If there is an emotional or psychological component involved to that problem, involved in that issue, often it will be better to leave that muddy water alone. Let me take a small example first. There is a student who has this one bad habit. What is a bad habit? Overthinking. No matter what the student does, no matter what he or she is preparing for, they have a tendency to overthink. Now, this is emotional or this is psychological. At this point in time, it is best to leave the problem alone. This student, for example, is thinking that I want to prepare for the civil services exam. At the moment I'm working, should I quit my job and then study, or should I try to balance my studies along with my job? Now, over here, if you think about it more and more, if you try to stir the muddy water, it will become more and more complicated. So here, instead of doing anything about it, it would be better to leave it alone. Don't overthink. Time itself will reveal the correct answer to you in a certain span of time. Here, it would be better to leave the muddy water alone. But where is it not correct, or where will muddy water not be cleared by leaving it alone? When it affects the physical, tangible aspects of our existence. Same problems I was talking about earlier: poverty, corruption, hunger, employment, social evils, social injustice, discrimination, racism. In these cases, leaving the muddy water alone will not clear it. Here, you will have to take proactive steps. You will have to come up with direct interventions. With this interpretation, now if I look at the topic, now this is a topic that I will partially agree with. Should muddy water be left alone? Sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes the answer is no. And if I had to write this essay, I will try to create a balance by saying that in some situations muddy water should be left alone, Some situations it should not be left alone. Once you interpret till here correctly, after that writing the essay will not be an issue for you. And abundant examples we have again. For example, if I talk about Oskar Schindler, the German in Germany during the Second World War, who earned a lot of money through war profiteering. Oskar Schindler had some connections in the Nazi party. When the Jewish Holocaust started, Jews were arrested, they were executed, they were sent to concentration camps. Oskar Schindler started taking over the properties and the businesses of many of these Jews, earned a lot of wealth. Now, at that point in time, what is the muddy water for a person like him? The Holocaust. Should it be left alone? No. By the end of the Second World War, Oskar Schindler started spending his wealth, started bribing Nazi officials to get Jews released from concentration camps, giving them employment in his factories. And by the end of the Second World War, he had saved 1,200 lives. If he had not intervened in that muddy water, if he had left the muddy water alone, the persecution of the Jews would have continued even further. So in a situation like this, we will say inaction is a very bad action. Who was that? I think Dante had said that the worst places in hell are reserved for those who maintain their neutrality at a time of crisis. There is a crisis, the water is muddy, but this is not the time to not stir the water. This is the time to actively intervene. Second example is the Nobel Peace Prize winner Nadia Murad. Now in her case, she's a Yazidi female. What is the muddy water for her? ISIS and sexual slavery. Captured by the ISIS, forced into sexual slavery for a few months, I think 3 or 4 months. Now here, is it important to stir the muddy waters? Yes, you must fight to escape. Because if you don't fight to escape, and even after escaping, unless you become a vocal speaker on the importance of maintaining the rights and the safety of women in conflict zones, these kind of sexual crimes will not stop. Even after Nadia Murad escapes, she can always say that I've had a very bitter experience. To borrow from the last topic, I've had a very bitter experience. I want nothing to do with this. But if she does that, the problem will become even worse over a period of time. She was given the Nobel, because her experiences, what she shared with the world, opened the eyes of many and generated sensitivity towards such conflict zones. Third example, Doctors Without Borders. Now, when you look at who are these people, by the way? Excellent doctors, experienced doctors who volunteer their time and their services to help with medical emergencies, to help with epidemics, to help with crisis across the entire world. And what is the muddy water over here? Medical emergencies. Should they be left alone? No. Why should they not be left alone? Because if you don't volunteer your time, your effort, your expertise, the medical problems will become even worse. Every country might not have the ability, the resources to be able to deal with the problems on their own. And that is exactly what the Doctors Without Borders do. Now, these three examples we are saying that you should not leave the muddy water alone. But there are some places where you should. For example, now 2 paragraphs I would write on this also. For example, the relationship between Japan and the US. What is the muddy water? The atomic bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Should this muddy water, should this issue be left alone? Answer is yes. Because if the Japanese start seeking revenge, if they seek retribution, if they seek what some might call justice for this, what will happen? This desire for revenge, for retribution, for justice will aggravate their enmity. It must have been a phenomenal decision for them. But Japan, after the Second World War, for reasons perhaps they can explain best, decided to let bygones be bygones, water under the bridge. And they focused on creating a better future. That is why they have never participated in any war after the Second World War. They've never had any armed conflict. And till 2006, they maintained only defense forces, not armed forces, the bare minimum that was required to ensure the security. And today, the Americans and the Japanese are one of the largest trading partners in the world. Why? Because sometimes it is better to leave the muddy water alone. That is the best way to clear it. Fifth, finally, now here I will not give a very specific example because that might become a little controversial, might become a little critical also, but attempts to rewrite history by claiming that so and so piece of land belongs to one country or the other, one community or the other, by claiming that a particular monument belongs to one community or the other. Like, you understand what I'm trying to say. Now over here, what is the muddy water? Historical disputes. And over here, it is best to leave these disputes on the side. Why? Because intervening in these disputes, bringing up these disputes, scratching old wounds will only create further rifts. Where these disputes came from, what the correct history was or was not, will not really help us in our present or help us in building a better future. But yes, it can polarize our society, it can polarize our people, and will create even more rifts in the future. So, like I said again, not a difficult topic, but slightly complex. Muddy water is best cleared by leaving it alone. Sometimes, yes, you should leave it alone, but sometimes you'll have to actively intervene. A topic that you don't agree with, don't disagree with, that you partly agree with. Next 3 topics now, the last 3 topics were fairly simple and straightforward. This was one topic which I personally think was very well written, very well framed. The years teach much which the days never know. Now, what does the topic mean? Again, first, interpret the topic correctly. What do you mean by years and what do you mean by days? Very simply, years are long time periods. How long is very difficult to define, but yes, the experiences and the wisdom that we get over a sustained period of time. On the other hand, what are days? Are short-term perceptions. This is our wisdom, this is our experience, but this is my perception at the moment, relatively shorter span of time. Number 2, what do years teach us? Years teach us, when you assess anything over a sustained period of time, over a long period of time, that could be your studies or your performance as a student, that could be the evolution of your town, how it has changed over the last 20, 30 years. That could be the evolution and the transformation of your country over the last 50, 70, 80 years. That could be the transformation of the entire human race over a period of centuries. When you look at the years, when you look at a long period of time, it will help you understand the transformative impact that small actions can create. Transformative impact, small steps, small initiatives that you take and the huge impact they are capable of creating. Number two, years also teach us the disruptive consequences of even good decisions. Even if you try to do something good, it is not necessary that you will necessarily be able to achieve something positive, something meaningful, beneficial. That years will teach you. How? I'll share a few examples with you. And number three, why do days never know this? Because usually we focus on the short term impact. Any initiative that we take, and a country takes an initiative, for example, for poverty alleviation, our objective, we are clear that we want to alleviate, we want to eradicate poverty. But in the short term, we only focus on the short term impact. Beyond a certain point, like what Herbert Simon had said, we are constrained by what is called bounded rationality. That there are limits to our rationality, limits to our intelligence, limits to our ability to foresee the future. The larger picture, largely, to a large extent, will evade us. We can just focus on what is right in front of us. Good topic. I think a very nice statement that they gave here. Now, same understanding, if I want to relate it, if I want to substantiate it, what will we say? First example, years teach us, which the years teach much, which the days never know. First, the partition of India. Now, in the partition of India, at that time, what did the days think? At that time, in the short term, what did we think? We thought that a two-state solution would lead to communal peace, would lead to harmony. Both the countries will be able to live peacefully. But what have the years taught us? That it was this very partition which laid the foundation, which was the genesis for regional rivalry. And even today, 80 years after independence, almost 80 years later, that rivalry is not subsiding. Second, the Green Revolution. What did the days think? At that time, despite their best intentions, policymakers and scientists thought that increasing agricultural yield, focusing on increasing agricultural yield, will lead to prosperity. But the years have taught us that even the Green Revolution had many unintended consequences. That fertilizers have come at a terrible environmental and human cost. We do know that we were able to, because of the Green Revolution, we were able to escape food insecurity. Fact of the matter is that in states like Punjab, we have today what is called a cancer train running from Batinda to Bikaner. A lot of people traveling on this train from Batinda, the Malwa region of Punjab, they travel to Rajasthan, specifically to Bikaner, to get treatment for cancer. But why is the incidence of cancer so high in the Malwa region? Because of the unintended consequences of the Green Revolution. What the days did not know, could never know, the years have taught us. To also add a couple of positive examples, Lichat Papad. 7 women in 1959 take a loan of 80 rupees, and at that point in time, what was their intention? The days thought that they were just trying to earn some extra income, to get some extra disposable income. These women realized that their daily lives were very normal, very mundane, very monotonous. Wake up in the morning, take care of your household chores, clean the house, take care of the children, cook food, and so on. But they realized that they had one knack. They could make very good papad. They also realized that if they tried to make papad individually, it would not be commercially very viable. But if they came together, they could achieve something better. I don't think even they had imagined what this would lead to. These women would meet 2 or 3 times every week. They would pool in their resources. The ingredients for papad, they would buy them together, which would lower the cost. They would go home, they would roll the papad, they would put it on their tin roof to dry it. Then they would pack it 2-3 days later. They would meet one of these middlemen, wholesalers, sell it to him and get some money from there. The days at that point in time were thinking that they were just generating some disposable income. What have the years taught us? The exponential power of cooperatives. That is Lichat Papad now. Lichat Papad today is an enterprise which is worth 1600 crore rupees, and it employs 45,000 female workers. It's an all-women cooperative. 45,000 women have been able to get this work. Another example, if I wanted to add here with Amul, with the Lichat Papad, would be Amul. Again, initially, what did the farmers think? That they would increase their income to some extent. But I don't think even they realize what the years have taught us, the power of the White Revolution. Another example, the forest man of India, Jadav Payang. What did the days think when he started? What was he thinking? That he was just planting some saplings. Initially, he saw a few local species dying out, and he thought that if I can plant some trees, these local species will be able to live. This is Assam, a barren sandbar. What have the years taught us? That he has transformed this into a 1360-acre forest. And today you will not just find snakes and you will not just find amphibians there. You will find wildlife, you will find leopards, you will find elephants walking in that area. Why? Because years teach us what the days may never know. Fifth and finally, again a positive example and a very powerful example, Japanese parenting culture. In India, we often have helicopter parenting where parents take excessive interest in their children. In fact, not even interest, they excessively interfere in their children's life and decisions. In Japan, on the other hand, they believe in a liberal culture where Japanese parents believe that you should prepare the child for the road, not the road for the child. As a result, what do they do? What do the days think? On a daily basis, inculcate small but good and positive habits. And what do the years teach us? That these small habits can shape your national character. Japanese citizens, wherever they go across the world, are admired for their sense of responsibility, for their civic sense, and for their sensitivity towards the environment. Most recently, this was seen, I don't remember the World Cup, I think it was the 2023 Qatar World Cup football. During the Qatar World Cup, Japan as a country, as a society, earned global respect because in many stadiums, once the match got over, spectators would walk out, they would leave behind a lot of garbage, cold drink bottles, chips packets, and so on. Any Japanese tourists who were in that stadium watching the match, even if Japan was not playing, would stay back after the match to clean the garbage, to clean the litter that was thrown by others. Years teach us what the days. I don't think the parents understood at that time, or even today understand, the huge transformative impact they're having on the children as well as the country. Like I said again, simple topic, very nice statement again, I must repeat. This is a topic again which I think many students would have written on, a simple topic, best to see life as a journey, not as a destination. In the last few years, the UPSC has used some topics which have large shades of reflection from previous year's topics. Last year, for example, I think my favorite topic from 2024 was that there is no path to happiness, happiness is the path. Very similar thinking, very similar orientation is this topic. You should see life as a journey, not as a destination. Now, what is a destination and what is a journey? A destination is a goal. A destination is an objective. A destination is a dream, is a desire, is a passion. On the other hand, what is a journey? A journey is striving for that objective, continued efforts, lifelong learning. Number two, why should we not see life as a destination? Because life is an accumulation of endless goals. No matter how much you achieve, there will always be a little more that you need to achieve. Why should we not see life as a destination? Because if you see it as a destination, you will confine yourself to one goal. This will inhibit your curiosity. This will limit your potential. This will lead to stagnation and discontent. Let me put this in a slightly different manner. What do you mean by seeing life as a destination? Let me imagine a student who's currently in class first. This student believes that my destination at the moment, the toughest thing that he's heard about in life, is class 10th. So he believes that my destination is to get a good score in class 10th. Fair enough, he gets 98%. Class 10th, he thinks that I have to go a little further. Class 12th, I have to repeat my performance. Class 12th, he gets 99%. Then he believes that my destination, my next destination, is to graduate from a good college with good marks. Does that also another 3 years go by? Then he believes that I should do a good postgraduate course, some professional course. That also goes by. After that, he will probably start working. Then he will want an increment. Then he'll want to get married. Then he'll want to have children. Then he'll want the children to do well. And the cycle will go on endlessly. The process will go on endlessly. That is why we say that if you confine yourself to just one goal, invariably your worldview will be very narrow. You will limit your potential. You'll be repetitive, mechanical in your efforts, and the larger picture will evade you. On the other hand, what happens when we see life as a journey? When you see life as a journey, you always seek new opportunities. You are always trying to learn, and most importantly, you remain motivated. No matter what you've done, no matter what you've achieved, you always want to do a little more. You realize that life is a lifelong journey, is an endless journey, where there is always something more that will keep coming, for the better, for the worse. And if I want to see who treated life as a journey or as a destination, not as a destination, here are some examples. Mother Teresa, the first example, Nobel Prize winner again, Bharat Ratna in fact. What is the journey of her life? Journey of her life is to help the poor and the destitute. Why can there be no destination for us, for her? Because human suffering is endless. Misery is endless. There are always people that you have to help. Now imagine Mother Teresa says that my destination, my objective is to open 200 worldwide missions for the missionaries of charity. Today they have 758 missions, if I remember correctly. If she'd opened only 200, what would happen to the remaining 550? She could have said that my destination is to win a Nobel Prize, one of the greatest honors that humanity can give you. But if she had stopped after that, she won the Nobel Prize in 1979. What would she have done after that? She lived another, how many years? Another 18 years after that, till 97. She could have said that I want to win the Bharat Ratna. That is in 1980 that she got the Bharat Ratna. Another 17 years left. That's why we say treat it as a journey, not as a destination, not one goal or one accomplishment that defines who you are or what you want to achieve in life. Second is ISRO. For ISRO, what is the journey? Scientific excellence. No matter how many difficulties, how many adversities, how many failures they have to endure. Why is there no destination? Because scientific advancement is limitless. One day it will be Mangalyaan, another day it will be Chandrayaan, another day it will be Gaganyaan, and the journey will keep going on. Why? Because scientific advancement, space exploration is endless. At the moment, we have not even been able to exit the solar system. Not even the solar system. Forget solar system. We're not able to reach Mars for that matter. So this is always going to be endless. There is no destination. It has to be treated as a journey. Third, Malala Yousafzai, again another Nobel Prize winner. What is the journey of her life? Education for girls. And why is there no destination? Because difficulties and obstacles will keep arising. It is not enough for her to win the Nobel Prize. It is not enough for her to create the Malala Fund. She will have to keep striving. That is the only way that she will be able to achieve what she actually wants to. That process will be lifelong. From Rajasthan, number 4, the Bishnoi community. What is the journey of their life? To protect wildlife, Jeev Daya. And why is there no destination? Because there will be recurrent threats to wildlife in one form or the other. One day it will be a movie star, another day it will be common citizens, another day it will be people who believe that by killing certain animals, endangered species, we can get their body parts which can make medicines for us. The threats will be relentless, will be unending. That is why there is no destination. It has to be a way of life for you. And fifth, finally, the very famous author, J.K. Rowling. Now, what is the journey of her life? To tempt children to read and to imagine. I'm sure most of you watching this video would be very young, you'd be in your early 20s. But if you speak to a person who's older than you, they will tell you, someone who's about 30, 35, 40 years old, they will tell you that immediately before the Harry Potter novels, before the first novel was released, children seem to have lost the habit of reading. Reading comics, reading fairy tales, storybooks had become a thing of the past. And then this one lady, what is her journey over here? To tempt children to read, to write something which children actually enjoy reading. And why is there no destination? Because imagination has no limits. Neither the children's imagination nor the author's imagination. I am not very familiar with the later works, but I believe that even after finishing the Harry Potter series, after concluding the Harry Potter series, there are many other similar fantasy books that she's been writing. And each book that she writes, the last one was released a few months back, each book that she writes receives a very large audience. Children really look forward to reading that. Why? Because you should see life as a journey, not as a destination. She could have said after, I don't know, 7 or 8 Harry Potter novels, I don't know how many, But after writing those many novels, she could have always stopped. That I've earned wealth, I've earned fame, I've got financial security, everything that I wanted. But for any person who writes, it is not about the destination, it is not about concluding a book. It is a lifelong journey that they will continue on. Like I said, I personally think many students again must have written on this topic. And then finally, there was that last topic, contentment is natural wealth, luxury is artificial poverty. Again, first, understanding topic correctly, how is contentment natural wealth? Contentment is natural because this contentment cannot be forced upon you. Nobody can make you feel content or happy. It has to come from within. It is self-determined. And number two, how is this wealth? It is wealth because it gives you satisfaction with whatever you have. I don't know if you've heard this. I'm sure you must have heard that story about that man who was sitting, some say under a tree, some say on a beach, let's say under a tree. This man sitting under a tree just sleeping, and a rich person comes along and says, why are you sleeping here? You should do something. So this person says, what? He says, why don't you buy a cow and start selling the milk? He said, then what will happen? He said, then with the money that you get by selling the milk, you'll be able to buy 2 cows, then 5 cows, then 20 cows, then 200 cows. And you know how it's going. He says, then what? He says, you'll earn more money, you'll have a big house, you'll have a lot of wealth, all of that. And he says, then what? He says, then finally you'll be able to do whatever you want. He says, but that is precisely what I'm doing right now. I'm doing what I want to. This is what we call wealth, satisfaction, having genuine satisfaction, being content with what you have, with what we are. On the other hand, why is luxury artificial poverty? It is artificial because the standards of luxury are set by others. What? A simple question, if I want to explain this to you. If I want to buy a new phone, what would be considered an expensive phone? One person will say 5,000, another will say 20,000, another will say 1 lakh, another will say even 5 lakh rupees is very common. The standard of luxury, the standard of wealth, the standard of what is good enough for anyone is not set by us. It is usually set by others. We follow others, we seek their opinion, their validation to decide for ourselves what we consider to be right or wrong, what we consider to be luxurious. That's why we say it is artificial. And number two, why is it poverty? Because there will always be a sense of relative deprivation. No matter what you have, no matter how much you have, there will always be a little more that you will want. I start by buying a bike for myself. I see a person who has a car. I buy a car. I see a person who has a luxury car. I buy a luxury car and the process will go on endlessly. As long as I compare myself with others, as long as I live my life according to standards which are set by others, I will always feel deprived. On the other hand, if I'm content with what I have, if I'm content with what I am, there I will always feel wealthy. I will always feel blessed. Every single student, if I look at it from the perspective of the students, many students have very, very supportive families, very loving parents, very good educational background. By God's grace, they are blessed with good health also, a good mind also. But they aspire to standards which are set by others. Whether those standards are physical, intellectual, professional, financial, in any form. And as long as you are aspiring to standards set by others, high probability you will not be content. Now this, if I want to understand, again from different perspectives, different thoughts. Number one, Ashoka. Now what is the luxury or what is the artificial poverty in his case? Territorial expansion. The desire to expand the Mauryan Empire as much as he can. And as long as he's doing that, he's not happy, he's not content. He wins one war, then a second war, then a 10th war, but he's never able to find that peace, that equanimity that he wants within himself. On the other hand, what is contentment and natural wealth? Inner peace. And he achieves that only when he understands what he did wrong after the Kalinga War and only when he embraces Buddhism. That's why we say that contentment is the natural wealth, luxury is only artificial poverty. Azim Premji, Wipro. Now what is luxury? For a person like him, compare him with many Indian industrialists. I will not take any names here, but compare him with many other Indian businessmen, Indian industrialists. They have ostentatious habits. They spend a lot of money. They show in a very vulgar manner sometimes, they display their wealth. But that is artificial poverty, because no matter what you're doing, someone is doing a little more. In contrast, for Azim Premji, what is the contentment or what is the natural wealth? Philanthropy. If I remember correctly, he's donated a little more than $25 billion in one charitable exercise toward or the other. And that gives him his very simple, very humble lifestyle. And yet a man who we can genuinely say is very happy, very content with his life. Third, the famous stockbroker Rakesh Jhunjhunwala. Now, what is the luxury? He, in fact, admitted this himself. Rakesh Jhunjhunwala, in one of his last interviews, right before he passed away, and he passed away, I think, in his 50s, 57, 58 years old, he said that all my life I have had one desire to earn as much money as possible. But in that desire to earn more money, I ignored my health. He says, today I've come to a point where if I look at something, I can buy it within, without a second thought, at a moment's notice. He said, the problem is I can't enjoy any of it. I can buy a car, I can buy a plane, I can go for the most expensive holidays, but my health does not permit me to indulge in any of these activities. Now, for him, what was the artificial poverty? What was the luxury he was seeking? Thomas wealth. And he would have found, I wish he had found it, but he would have found contentment from that natural wealth, the most important wealth for any human being, which is your personal health. Fourth, once again, the example of Gautam Buddha. What is the artificial poverty or what is the luxury? The life of a prince. On the other hand, where does he get contentment from? By attaining nirvana. He is one of the very few people who, despite living a luxurious life of royalty, left everything behind, started searching for why we suffer so much, was able to identify the cause, and was actually able to attain nirvana. And fifth, finally, the famous cyclist Lance Armstrong. He won the Tour de France, which is one of the toughest cycling competitions, 7 times, a record 7 times. Now, what is the luxury or what is the artificial poverty for him? Desire to win at any cost. Why do we say this is artificial poverty? Because you're never happy. No matter how much you're winning, you always want more. And as you are aging, 7 years, he won 7 titles. As you're aging, your physical abilities are bound to decline. But he wants to win at any cost. So what does he do? He starts doping. As a result of which, when people got to know that he had cheated to win these tournaments, he lost all his medals, lost all the honor, and earned for himself international disrepute, international infamy. On the other hand, what would have given him contentment? I believe winning on merit. Don't win 7, win only 1 Tour de France. But that one victory, if it belonged to you, that would give you the kind of contentment that nothing else would give you, not these 7 victories. And why do I say that? Because he himself was the person who admitted that he had cheated. He confessed that on his own. Why? Because the guilt of not deserving the victory that has been granted to you must have been eating him up. That's why we say that contentment is natural wealth, but luxury is only artificial poverty. This was the paper that was conducted this year, the essay paper. And like I said earlier also, to be honest with you, this was an easy paper. There was nothing difficult. One topic again that could have been considered slightly challenging was topic number 5. The remaining 7 were fairly simple, fairly straightforward. Yes, most of them, almost all of them were reflective essays, philosophical essays. But with the right interpretation, with the right content, writing an essay on any of these topics should not have been a problem. And before I conclude, one more time, for any student who is facing problems with the essay or who wants to improve in the essay paper, who wants to get a good score in this paper, Vajiram is starting 2 programs, the essay module on the 14th of September and the essay test series, 8 tests from the 1st of September 2025. Thank you very much.